Welcome back. It's time for our Capital Report with CapitalBeatOK.com's Pat McGuigan. Pat, talking about the Quality Jobs Act. 18 years in, there are many people who say that this thing has strayed too far afield, that it is costing taxpayers much more than originally envisioned in the per job that's actually created. Tell us about this program. What were the original intentions?
Well, it was created under former Governor David Walters, and I think it's generally regarded as a very positive program. Our reporting, Stacey Martin's reporting, leads to at least some questions about whether it's gone astray, as you put it. The original idea was to support startups and or job expansions in the state. It recognized the reality that business incentives are part of the marketplace, if you will, in government economic development. The idea was that the benefits to the state were to, in the long run, be higher than the cost of the program. And finally, it's financed by the income tax levy, and the companies are required to provide health insurance benefits to their employees. So there's the original vision, and again, I think people recognize it as a pretty good one.
Your team, Stacey Martin, combed through a lot of records. What maybe are some of the most shocking things or more shocking discoveries you came up with?
$233,000 per job created in one case. Not a typical program, but one case.
$233,000 per job.
Yes. Dell in a second case, Dell being several hundred jobs below what had been committed to under the program, and yet they're still receiving the income stream. A company like CFS went through a major bankruptcy in the late 90s, and they're on the verge of being back in the program again. Great Plains, one of the most terrible examples of a bad economic development program. There are others. Higher cost per job than originally envisioned in many cases. Direct rebates. $6.5 million for pharmacy jobs in the Walmart system. Payments to companies even as they're closing their doors or leaving the state. And no clawbacks. Clawbacks is kind of a technical expression. It's a pretty good way to envision. The idea is that in your program you have a way to claw back some of the money you've advanced to a company if they don't follow through on their commitments. The program doesn't have clawbacks. Generally, you'd probably score this as a program that's quote-unquote worked for the state. The question is it working well enough to have this kind of government intervention in the economy? So
what do you think these discoveries you've made, this reporting, is going to mean for the state, for this program?
Well, I think it's a reasonable question to ask if the state of Oklahoma cannot afford a tax cut for income tax payers. Can it afford tax subsidies of this kind for people that are consuming tax resources? Now, the best of these programs, Chesapeake and Devon, for example, have followed through on job commitments, and the cost per job is not outrageous. There's some others you can point to, but I think that's a reasonable question. Can the state afford this program? If it can't afford to reduce income tax burden for taxpayers.
How do you see taxpayers reacting to this information?
I think people are asking, is it worth it? Is it a proper activity for government? And I think it illustrates something you and I discussed quite a while back, and that was after Boeing left Wichita. After everything that Wichita and the state of Kansas had done, they pulled a big chunk of their business out, and Oklahoma City got some of it, but it illustrated the limit of business incentives and their effectiveness in a complex marketplace. It really brings the question back to, should government be doing things like this, or should it just leave it to the market?
I know you'll continue to follow this. Let's switch topics and briefly talk about Women in Recovery. Just had its largest ever graduation class. This is for nonviolent female offenders. How does this program work?
This is a really good, positive Oklahoma story. It's a program based out of Tulsa, and Chris Steele is promoting it as a model for the state as we move into the justice reinvestment era that we've talked about previously. Bottom line, intensive supervision of nonviolent offenders, typically drug offenders, women. It's targeted at women, and they even give a bias, if you will, in favor of capturing into the program women with children. 18 women I was privileged to be there at the graduation ceremony in the Blue Room at the Capitol. 18 women, their largest class ever. It costs, and yet it's much less expensive than incarcerating human beings. So it's a model for the future. And you just can't help but weep when you hear some of these stories. They're so inspiring.
Read more about these and other topics at CapitolBeatOK.com. For Pat McGuigan, I'm Alex Cameron. Have a great Saturday.